I have a studio in Dublin, been doing film music a good bit. So, working steadily, and I've got a family now, so I've got to properly bring home the bacon. And I have a place in Dublin, and I live on the west coast in Ireland in a little town called Easkey that has the best point break in Western Europe. Every time I go out in the water, I realise how much paddling, how unfit I am for paddling. So I usually paddle out, get the first wave, take it in, and then on the secondary paddle out, I'll realise, oh my God, I've got to get out. I do a lot of cycling these days, but then it rains, 311 days of the year where I live, so even cycling's difficult. The worst aspects of living between Australia and Ireland is clearly the distance between the two. It takes 32 hours to get from my door in Sligo to Melbourne, Australia. Musically, they're very similar. I seem to be able to go from one to the other quite comfortably. Same with my connections with New Zealand, with Neil Finn and the whole Crowded House camp. I originally became involved with Tarmac Adam through Paul Hester. It was more of a vehicle to reconnect with Paul, I think, because we hadn't seen each other for a couple of years, since he left Crowded House, really. And it was a great means to play with him again. And that was for the first album. And then sadly, Paul's demise occurred, and the relationship that I'd made with Steve and Matt from the first record meant that I stepped into the breach of the second album as well. The references for Tarmac Adam, this second batch of demos that Matt had sent me, I always listen to demos and make musical references in my head automatically as to what ballpark a song might fit into, understand the verse, chorus, bridge, instrumental structure, and then try to diversify or make very subtle changes between the points at which the bass should draw attention to itself in that structure, or be completely translucent or transparent. So sometimes it's as easy as going from full time in a chorus to a half-time verse, playing half as many notes in the verse. A lot of songs I played with Crowded House, I would do that as well. It would be a device that, but if you listen to a lot of Motown, a lot of the way James Jamerson would structure a bass line, he'd do a very similar thing, with a pumping chorus and a sort of a more languid melodic verse. Paul McCartney's a great example of that as well. Musical references are how all musicians draw inspiration, and there's not many new ideas around, really. It's like new ideas are cyclical, so a lot of musicians really don't, but the guys in Tarmac Adam really do enjoy a kind of a, dare I say, a postmodernist view of referencing other people's work in a kind of a hybrid style, just so that you've got some mantle to be able to play together on, like a manifesto from song to song. The idea of a homage, doing a homage to another artist. When I went to college, at art school, I learned a lot of my techniques in painting or printmaking by doing homage to other painters and printmakers. And in music, it's similar. There's no difficulty with that. You learn to play rock music by way of parrot talking other things. I always did as a bass player. I learned all the bass lines. To an artist that didn't like direct musical references, I will taper it with fine art references. References to painting, underpainting, chiaroscuro, things like this, just to confuse the issue, and rather than saying this sounds like the White Stripes, let's move on with that, or I'd be thinking, oh, this is a little more sort of neoclassical, a little like Caravaggio meets Titian. The School of Athens, perhaps. When I'm in a recording studio, I like to work from about 11 in the morning through till dinner time, and then a little bit past dinner, because the wine will have kicked in at around dinner time, and you're naturally fatigued by everything in the wine. But my preferences are Western European. I like a Tempranillo Spanish. I like a Tuscan Italian and the occasional French. When you're trying to make plan a record or get your best ideas when you're out walking or whatever and get into a pattern, if you have the privilege of being able to forget what day it is, I think that's the best place to try to, to capture your muse.